Hi everybody, this is Darlene from darlenestamps.stampinup.net. I'm so glad you found me today on YouTube. I wanted to share with you a couple of products from the Sale-a-bration catalog that is current for Stampin' Up. It is live, this catalog is live January and February, and it is an opportunity for you as a customer of Stampin' Up to select free items. The way the promotion works is for every $50 of merchandise that you purchase before tax and shipping, you can choose items from this special catalog for free. For example, if you spend your $50, you can choose this adorable owl stamp set. So there are stamp sets as well as paper packages in here as free products. And today I wanted to feature two different things, two different stamp sets actually in this catalog. So let's get started. The stamp set that I'm featuring is called In the Country. It is a 2-stamp set, and you can see that they've taken, this kind of reminds me of like an Italian or a Greek villa might look, and then a country field with a fence. So we're going to be stamping with this today, and then I'm going to feature another free product a little bit later in the video. So let's get started. The paper that I'm going to use today is our shimmery white paper. Let me get it showing here for you. It is 8.5 by 11. It is shimmery on both sides. Not sure the camera is going to show the shimmer, but it is sparkly on both sides, so it doesn't matter which side you use. And it is kind of an off-white in color. That's going to be our paper today. Now the reason I chose the shimmery white is because it is a little heftier than our basic white, and we are going to be using some fluids today on the paper. You can also use the watercolor paper, would do well with these techniques. I'm going to use the shimmery white. The first thing we're going to do, I'm going to bring up my sample here. I have stamped the little villa image on the shimmery white, and I'm going to use some different products to do the coloring. The first thing I'm going to use is our colored pencils. Now Stampin' Up! Offers 2 sets of colored pencils. This set has been out for quite some time. It has 13 pencils including white. And then I think it's maybe 3 years ago now we've offered the second set, and this kind of fills in some of the colors, gives you a much broader color palette. Okay, so we're going to be using, these are watercolor pencils. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is choose our pencils, and I've chosen a couple. There's Coastal Cabana, Cherry Cobbler, Basic Gray, Early Espresso, and Old Olive to do my coloring. And then we're going to be blending those colored pencils with our blender pen. Now a blender pen is a colorless marker. It comes with 2 points. They are identical points. This is filled with a glycerin-based product. It has no color. It's just going to blend whatever it touches. When you purchase blender pens, they come in a pack of 3. So that you really get 6 points, 6 tips. And if you have inks, if you have Stampin' Up! Inks, these can actually become markers for each of the inks. But today we're going to use them with our colored pencils. Now the first thing I want to show you is depending on the pressure that you use with your coloring, you can get different shades of a color. What I used here, and I'm not going to color the whole image for you, I'm not going to take that time, I just want to give you a couple of different looks here. What I did here was I used my Cherry Cobbler for the door and then for the little pots. I know this image is small, so here are my pots and the door, and then I used my Old Olive for a little bit of the greenery and then some grass here at the bottom of the stairs. Now you can tell that when I colored these, I used heavy pressure. I pressed hard so that I get a deep color. Okay? Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my blender pen. And now I'm going to take the tip of my blender pen and I'm going to lightly touch where I colored with the colored pencil. And it's going to literally, I would say, kind of melt, I don't know, for lack of a better word, melt those colors, melt those pencils. And so now you have them blended. You don't have the harsh line. Okay? Now, I'm changing to the green, right? So I don't want to keep that red ink on my blender pen. So very, very simply, when you're changing colors, you just take your blender pen, swirl, and scribble, swirl and scribble. And you can see here I had the ink, and down here I don't have it anymore. So now my point is cleared. Now I can go to my green, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm just going to lightly touch. This is not a precise technique, okay? We're not staying in the lines. We're not getting particular, if you will. My point is to take the dark, harsh green and soften it with the blender pen. And I'm going to come down here and do that a little bit with the grass. And it's nice because you can see I even get some shading, right? It's kind of darker and then it blends out. So here is my colored pencils using the blender pen. Okay? And then to clear that out, I'm just again going to swirl and scribble, and my blender pen is cleared for the next project. Okay, so that's using colored pencils with a blender pen. Okay. Now here is that same scene. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you, I'm going to color in some of this, what I would call the stucco or the stonework. Now I'm going to take my basic gray, but instead of hitting it hard with hard pressure, I'm just going to lightly, can you see this? I'm very lightly coloring that. Not the hard pressure. Now I'm going to take that same blender pen and I'm just going to blend all those harsh lines. And you can see this is very subtly colored. So it's the same exact tools, the colored pencils, the watercolor pencils with the blender pen, and yet this is a totally light shade. So you can see how on one image you can get darker shading and lighter shading with the same tools. It just depends on the pressure that you use. Okay? So that's the blender pen and our watercolor pencils. Okay, now let's take the watercolor pencils again. Make sure I'm doing the right one. So I have my watercolor pencils. Whoops. Kind of going all over the place here. Okay, now this is the field image. This time I'm going to use a different blending tool, and that is our water painters. Our water painters come in a set of 3. There is a fine tip, a medium tip, and the broad brush. These have water barrels in them. I don't know if you can see my water in there. And you simply unscrew them, fill them up, and screw your tip back on. It's really nice, especially if you're traveling, if you're taking your crafting tools with you. You don't need to have a cup or a pan for water. You can just empty these out and fill them when you need them. Water painters. The other thing you should have handy is either a paper towel or a microcloth, something that you're going to be able to control the water of your water painter. Okay, now let's take the grass. Okay, so this time I'm going to do hard pressure where these black lines are. Again, I'm not going to do the whole image. Okay. So I'm doing it dark where the dark lines are. And a lot of times Stampin' Up! Stamps give you a hint as to where shading happens by these darker lines. Okay, just a little bit. All right. Now to get my water painter ready. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze on the barrel to get water to come out. And I don't know if, yes, you can see that. Okay, so now my brush is moist. We do not want water gushing out of the brush. You don't want an overflow of water because it'll saturate your paper and it'll really ruin the color. So now I'm just going to take my water painter and I'm going to brush it over where my watercolor pencil was. And you can see it's a much, it's a watery look. It's the best way to describe it. It's very watery. It's not as, I guess, distinct as the blender pen is. Okay, so you can see it allows for some shading. There's some darker areas and some lighter areas. Totally different look, but still with the watercolor pencils. Okay, now when you're doing watercoloring, you want to avoid, like if I was going to do this part of the path here, it would be butting up against what I just watercolored, and you don't want to do that until that the first area is dry, because they will bleed into one another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the path on this side, and I'm going to clear my tip with the water painter. You just literally squeeze water through until it's clear. Now it's cleared. Okay. Now I'm going to do my brown. I think this was supposed to be a kind of a country road with some grass growing up in the middle. And I'll even do a little bit of the fence over here. This is early espresso. I'm not going to do everything, but I just want to show you. Okay, so now I've done some of my brown. Okay, now I'm going to take my water painter. Watercolor, again, I'm not an artist, but it's not an exact science, I don't think. The water kind of does its own thing sometimes. So don't expect, you know, everything to be perfectly in lines. That isn't how watercoloring works. Okay, so there is my watercolor look. So this was with colored pencils and the water painter. Okay, now the last way I'm going to use to color, I'm going to do the same little scene here. This time I'm going to not use watercolor pencils, but I'm going to use our inks, the actual inks, and a clear block. Let me clear out my point here, my tip. Okay. Again, not going to do the whole thing, just going to do a little bit. I love our glass blocks for watercolor palettes. I don't like to do water in the lid of my ink pads. I just always get concerned that it's going to water down the ink. There's my green. So I always put my inks on a block. I just got a blob of ink on my thumb. Okay. Okay, so now we have our image stamped. And now I'm going to take, I want to get my tip a little moist here. I'm going to take the green and I'm going to put my water painter direct to the green. Now you can see here that you can also change the depth of the color by going over something a couple of times, going back and adding more color from the block. Okay, so this is direct from the ink pad to the paper. Now again, I'll squeeze out. You can see the green coming through that brush. It's not quite clean yet. There we go. Now I'm clean. Now I will take the brown and I will do my path. And you can see how the color changes when you put it there. It's darker, and then as the color fades out, so does your image. And here is the other side. I think I goofed, and I think I did it in the grass, but you get the idea. So this is ink on a block and the water painter. Now I want to show you some samples that I did and to prepare for today. And I want to bring in the second product. I talked about two products I wanted to show today. The other one is this set called Sending Support. This is a word set that's in the Sale-a-bration catalog, again, free with a $50 purchase. The thing that I really noticed about this set was the size of the font. The fonts are small and they're a finer font, if you know what I mean. They're not bold. And the thing that I think is really good about this kind of a set is sometimes you don't want a big, bold greeting on the front. You just want to say something, but kind of whisper it rather than shout it. And so this kind of a set really lends itself to that. So here is that villa image. This I did with, like I did the last project with the watercolor on the block. And right down here, I did a little saying, believe in yourself. And I thought, you know, it just says something, it's not shouting it, but it lets them know a word of encouragement that I'm sending. Now I wanted to show you a couple of other sets. These are from the annual catalog that do the same kind of thing. This one is called Through It Together. And again, you notice the size of the fonts, much smaller, finer. Really a nice grouping on here. It has everything from I miss you to stay strong, my friend, believe in yourself, you're doing better than you think. I mean, just really some encouragements, and people know that you really have a specific thought about them. And then another one in a similar fashion is in the annual catalog. It's called Go To Greetings. What they've done here is they've taken some of the most common kinds of cards that we make. Happy birthday, of course, is always number one. Thank you is also, it's pretty up there with people sending thank you notes. Thinking of you, just a note. And what they've done here in one set, this is one set, they've taken those greetings and they've given you several different sizes and fonts. So here we have a very flowery, flowy, happy birthday, fairly feminine looking, I think. And here, excuse me, here we have a happy birthday that really could be masculine, could be for anybody really, but not quite as flowery. And here you have a little happy birthday, just as if you wrote it with a little black pen. So this is a great, if you're a beginner stamper and you're looking for some greetings that give you variety, this is a great stamp set. Go To Greetings in the annual catalog. Let me show you another sample that I did. This one again is the In the Country set. This one I did with our Stampin' Blends. Our Stampin' Blends are alcohol markers. They come in sets of 2, a dark and a light. And that's what I did all of the coloring with on here. And again, the small greeting. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you on this card, and I think you can see it pretty good right there. Can you see those little groovy lines? There's 2 groovy lines coming down and then 2 groovy lines along the bottom. I wanted to add some interest to the front of my card without adding anything bumpy and without adding a lot of weight. And so I grabbed my scoreboard. Let me just show you real quick. The scoreboard is a tool used for scoring, exactly what it says. And here you have, it's a large area. It can hold a 12 by 12. You have little markers, and it comes with its own stylus. Let me show you that. It's in its own little snap-in holder. Okay, so all I did for that card was I put my mat on the front, the front mat on the scoreboard, and then I just took my stylus and I just did some score lines, which were about 1/8 of an inch apart. Can you see? There they are. Okay, so you can do that kind of a point of interest on the front of your card without adding anything that's going to add to your postage. So think about that when you're looking for just something to make the fronts of your cards a little more interesting. Think about things like that that you can do that don't involve any kind of bulk or weight. This next card, I used the field image. And this one I did with the watercolor pencils and the water painter, okay? You'll notice that I fussy cut it out. We do not have a die, but I fussy cut it out. It's not that hard of a one to do. And then this image in the back is cut out with our layering diorama dies. And this coloring is done with our blending brushes. Now, in the new mini catalog, we have a new size blending brush. These are just like our larger ones. Let me grab one of those. They're just like our larger ones, but a smaller scale, kind of like the fonts that I'm talking about today. These are really nice. They come in a package of 3. They're really nice for doing smaller areas like this background. Okay, and then I just bumped this up with some dimensionals, and again, here is my little greeting. Okay, now another option that I used here was the, this was using the ink on a block like we did the last project. This one I cut out with a die. I wanted it to be kind of a window effect here. If you notice, you can lift it up and the image is actually on the inside of the card. Now, when I did this and I cut this window with one of our dies, and I was looking at it, it just looked, it was missing something. It was a little naked, if you will. And then I remembered a video that I saw a long time ago, and what this person did was, in order to kind of make a frame around the front of her card, she just used a fine tip pen, and you can see my boo-boo up here. My pen slipped. But all she did was free-handed a little ziggy-zaggy, if you will, around it, and a double one. I did a double one. It's kind of like a Zentangle look, if you will, and I just thought, this is great. It gives a frame. It made it not naked anymore, and it just added a little bit of interest. And here again, my small greeting. And then the last one that I did total watercolor like we did with the glass block. So I had my glass block, and I put my inks right on here and used my water painter. Now you notice that this is a different size. Do you see the size of this? It is smaller. What I thought about was, we sell a product called note cards. They are 3.5 by 5. They come in a pack of 20 with 20 envelopes. They come in very vanilla as well as basic white. And I thought this is the kind of image that could get lost if it wasn't handled right on the front of a big card. But here it just fits perfectly. I did a little mat behind it. Have my little greeting. And there's plenty of space, even though it's a smaller card, there's plenty of space inside to write a few words. Again, note cards and envelopes, 20 in a pack, very vanilla and basic white. So today we talked about Sale-a-bration and how you can get products for free with $50 purchase. We looked at in the country, and we looked at sending support, a great duo. Once again, you can find me at darlenestamps.stampinup.net if you'd like to purchase any of the products that you saw today. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. YouTube really looks at those. The likes, the thumbs up are really important. They help to grow your channel, and I would appreciate you doing that for me. Also, if you have a crafty friend that you think would enjoy this video, please hit the share button and send it to them. I'm always honored when somebody becomes a subscriber and hits the notification bell so that whenever I do a new video, you'll be aware of that. As always, I like to leave you with a thought for the day. Today's words say, life is about using the whole box of crayons. Bye until next time.